you have to particularize your problem. Why can't men find women to date? That's not your problem. Your problem is why you can't find the woman you want. Yeah. And you have to assume that's your problem, because otherwise you have to assume that it's the women's problem. And really? They're all wrong and you're right. Really? Lucky you. Maybe you are. You're an undiscovered gem of some sort. Probably not. Be a little stronger, dress a little better, speak a little more clearly, aim a little higher, and practice that, and that'll work. Now, I know that that's more difficult for some people than others, because some people bear incredibly difficult developmental burdens, and I'm not saying that this is easy, but I'm saying that it's a useful reaction. Like, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Complain about women? I've seen that in men. I went out with a group of men who were having trouble with their wives, and they'd gone off to this couples retreat, and it was mostly rubbish, although they were trying a bit to get their lives together. And I spent a whole day with them. There were 3 of them, and one of them was a guy that I'd known for quite a while, and every single word he said was a lie. And all these 3 did the whole day was complain about their wives. And I thought, what the hell's wrong with you guys? You picked them. They're these women you picked, and maybe they have their flaws, but they're your wives. And that's how you talk about them? And you think they're the problem? You're so dumb that you don't even know that you shouldn't badmouth your wife. Just because she's your wife. When Tammy and I got married, we had a discussion about that. It's she has her flaws and I have my flaws, but I'm her husband and she's my wife, and there's a certain respect that goes along with that category, if you have any sense. And so that's an extension of the same thing. It's best to look to yourself. Now and then you can, things have gone rotten in society, and you have to bear your responsibility. You have to address that at a social level and a communal level, but fundamentally it's and you do so much less harm if you look to yourself first as the problem. And believe me, you're plenty of problem for you. You're all the problem you need for you. That's for sure. I would say to young men who are irritated at women is, if you're irritated at women, as a class of creature, there's something wrong with you, because they're right. You're wrong. They're right to not pick you. If they're not picking you, it's because they're right. Wow. Now, that might I know that's a terrible thing to say, and I know perfectly well, it wasn't like I was particularly successful with girls when I was young. So I know what that rejection is like. I know what that fear is like. I don't know it as well as some men know it, because I wasn't rejected outright. But what you have to understand is that, what do you expect from women? If you got pregnant because you had sex, you'd be pretty damn choosy too. So, clue in a bit. And then, well, don't they find you attractive? Well, maybe you're not. Have you paid attention to how you dress? Do you have a plan? Are you as educated as you could be? Are you a liar? Are you a rabid pornography user? Because maybe that's undermining your motivation to seek out a woman and grow yourself up. It's if you're rejected constantly and you're out there really trying, because that's another thing to ask yourself is, well, how many women have you actually asked out? And are you so sure that you're not picking women who will certainly reject you because you're trying to bat out of your league? Because you might be. So, and I'm speaking about this as a clinician too, because I had plenty of men in my practice who were, radically unsuccessful with women. I had one man in particular, he was so afraid of women he couldn't use the phone. He was too afraid of everyone to use the phone. And he had been bullied like mad, and he had his problems. So I know what this is like, but pornography is a big problem. It's a big problem. It's a real curse, that pornography, in my opinion, because it's an easy out. And so we don't know what the consequences of that are. We're starting to understand some of them. But if you were better you'd be more successful with women. So you have to have that in your mind. And they're not, you cannot be angry at women. It's stupid. Women? It's like women being angry at men. It's a sign of psychological trouble, that. Women have a tendency to prefer bad men higher in dark triad traits. How come the Bible describes a mode of being as associated with nice guy traits which contradict that? Okay, well, I take issue with both elements of that, actually. I don't believe that women do have a tendency to prefer bad men higher in dark triad traits. They may have a tendency to be more erotically attracted to men who are capable of manifesting dominance and aggression. I think the evidence for that is relatively clear, and I don't think the Bible at all describes a mode of being as associated with nice guy traits. I don't know, that may be how it's classically taught, for example, because Christ is often presented, especially in more simple-minded variants, and I'm not being pejorative about that precisely, as the ultimate in nice guys, but I don't think that that's true at all. That's a reasonable characterization at all if you read the gospel accounts, because he was someone who was certainly capable of saying very, very harsh things to people, and was also identified very strongly as a figure who was capable of using judgment and distinguishing between what was positive and what was negative, and that capacity for judgment is something quite different than the mere nice guy compassion that would be associated with high levels of trait agreeableness. So I think that the idea that the ideal that's put forward in the biblical writings is something like be harmless, I think that's a real misreading of the text, and I also think that it's wrong, because harmless and good are not the same thing at all. And in fact, I think one of the best ways of characterizing like a higher order morality, and this is something that Nietzsche talked about a fair bit, is that, and Jung as well, with regards to the idea of integration of the shadow, is that someone who's moral has the capability for violence and the capability for aggression built in and at hand, but is also someone who's perfectly capable of controlling that in a civilized manner. And I think that, I'm speaking off the cuff here, obviously, but I think that the attraction that some women have for the sort of men who are more likely to misbehave, to act in a delinquent manner and so forth, is partly their desire to be associated with men who have the capacity for aggression. Now, the best of all possible worlds is when that capacity for aggression is civilized and held under control. But so I would say that one of the things that men should do as they mature is transform themselves into monsters, but also become civilized at the same time. And that's exactly what you see in stories like Beauty and the Beast, where the ideal man starts out as a beast and ends up civilized. He doesn't start out as a milksop, wimp sort of character who poses no threat to anyone and then becomes the hero. That isn't how it works, although there are stories of that kind of development.
What advice do you have for a young man in his 20s?
Make a plan. Look at what you're interested in. Get disciplined about something. Allow for the possibility that you have something important to contribute to the world, and that the world would be a lesser place without that contribution. Don't be afraid of taking on responsibility. It's where you find what sustains you in your life. You can take on too much responsibility. You have to be cautious in that regard, but that's a less common problem than not taking on enough. A lot of the things that people regard as traps are actually the means to their life. Often young people are afraid of commitment, for example, in the context of a romantic relationship, and because they feel that that's going to interfere with their pursuit of something more valuable. But that's just not the case. You're not going to find something more valuable in your life than a committed relationship with someone that you love, that sustains itself across time, and that in all likelihood produces children. That's life. And there may be people for whom avoiding that is the better route, but those people are very rare, and you need a real reason to assume that you're one of those people. And hopefully for you, you're not. I've had a very good career, a very meaningful career, in multiple dimensions. And it's still been the case for me that the most important part of my life has been my intimate relationship with my wife and my family.